of indigenous people, the human rights of undocumented people, not aliens, I hate that term, but people, the human rights of descendants of the worst race massacre in American history, the human rights of people who were drugged out of their own houses, killed and looted, the human rights of black men who are and women who are constantly stopped and killed, like George Floyd in Minnesota, the human rights of us just existing has always been, unfortunately, up for debate by some in this country. So much so that we had to have amendments to the Constitution for us to even be free, such as the 13th Amendment. We had to have an amendment to the Constitution for black people to be considered citizens. We had to have an amendment to the Constitution for us to even have civil rights. Why is it that marginalized groups, such as African Americans and Native Americans, who had to have treaties that were always broken, why is it that we have to have a legal document in addition to the Constitution just for us to be able to exist in our God-given right to live? You have to have documentation to just live in this country. But when God brought us forth, he didn't bring us forth with documentation or birth certificate. When God brought us forth, he gave us his divine certification that we have a hope of conscience, that we have a hope of heart. And it is that humanity that we appeal to for any and everybody, that we can proudly say with that humanity that black lives matter, that we can proudly say with every bit of civility that indigenous lives matter, that we can proudly say with every bit of spiritual conviction and righteous indignation, reparations, not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, not next year, but reparations now. Reparations now. We have to, unfortunately, we've waited since 1619, and we still have not gotten a thank you from building this country. We still have not gotten an apology or reparations. We, from 1921, we have yet to receive justice. And now one of those members of the mob have been brought to justice. But they did the same thing to the Native Americans. Butchered, slaughtered, killed, lives. And now some of their descendants are coming back home. And we want to say they need papers. Well, where were the papers for the Pilgrims? This city council just passed an ordinance, just passed the law wanting to remove the mural on Greenwood. Black Lives Matter. They voted to remove that. Said it didn't follow legal precedent or legal procedure. When did this government ever care about legal procedure? How in the heavens did they get this land in the first place? So don't lecture me about legal procedure. When the very fact that I'm here, they didn't go through a legal procedure when they kidnapped black men and women and children from Africa. They didn't go through a legal procedure when they went through Greenwood and dropped bombs and looted folks' houses. How dare they hide behind a legal procedure when people declared in asphalt that Black Lives Matter? But I'm thankful that there is an election on the horizon. And those that know me know I don't do political endorsements, but I will advocate for issues. And I advocate that we replace anybody that is against justice for everybody. That we replace anybody that's too afraid to give justice for all of God's children. So in that vein, let us pray to our Creator, our Father. We are grateful to be in your midst, in your presence. We ask that the memory of our ancestors who lived in this place and whose blood runs through our veins, that you allow us to honor their memory, to remember their sacrifice. We pray, oh God, for true justice, and not justice according to just man's law, but justice in accordance to your law and your will and your good pleasure for all of your children that you made. And that whenever there is a tyrant that seeks to deprive your children of their divine human rights, that you continue to raise up prophets to speak against them. We pray this prayer in the name of our greatest ancestor. We call Jesus the Christ. Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Apalani Pina, Chahodifuros, Idrogi, Amalegidos, Dolahasi, Wokogai, Amadovados. For what it counts, I'm a Muskogee Creek citizen, and I thank all of you for coming out here. And welcome to the Muskogee Creek Reservation that you're standing on right now. I want to introduce our next speaker, Mykey Arthrell. I'm going to personally vet for this dude. I have been friends with him since we were, 15, 16 years of age? And if you're sick of Cass Fowler and you live in District 5, he is running against Cass Fowler. And he almost beat him last time. So let's make sure that he does beat him this time. Mykey?
Thank you, Paulania. Thanks to all the organizers. I'm Mykey Arthrell. I'm running for City Council in District 5. Closer. Thanks. I want to talk about, my daughter told me to make this fun. So I can't do what Greg Robinson does when he gets the mic, but I could try. So in the past 17 years, I've been working in nonprofits, serving our community. There's something I've learned in all that time, and it's that systems are functioning as they were designed. My first job was out of college, working in a shelter. I worked with abuse survivors. I had to provide vital services for saving people's lives, helping them out, and that was like food stamps, cash assistance, stable housing. I realized, though, that this kind of made people play traditional victims to get help. It required interviews that suggested that they had nothing, that they needed everything, and they got the sense that if my clients had like a nickel in their pockets or they could fill up their tank, that they were on their own. So I decided rather than giving them a blueprint for social services, I was going to respond directly to their needs. That meant fundraising, getting them cars, getting them housing, getting jobs, like finding money to support whatever they needed by going to charitable organizations. I was raising over $5,000 a month to support families in their needs, to move on with their lives, become survivors, instead of being stuck in a system that needed them to remain victims. My director asked me to stop. She said I was not following protocol and we needed to provide services that we offered. Getting clients whatever they wanted wasn't my job. That's when I realized for the first time that systems are functioning as they were designed. In our system, there are very few outcomes that lead to independence, and what independence is gained is hard won. My director cared about people, thought they were getting them on government programs was a safe thing to do. Even the best intentioned people can often miss that these systems on some level are designed to perpetuate poverty. When I was facilitating support groups at the domestic violence shelter in Austin, Texas, actually, I lobbied teachers to get more kids into the groups because our funding was at risk. Once again, I was told to stop. This time it was because the teachers thought the groups were rewarding bad behavior. These were the tough kids, the ones that were causing the issues that I was doing the groups with. And they thought my groups were a reward. So, the funding was cut. I lost my job. But once again, the system was functioning as it was designed. It insisted that we force students into the jail system that we have to try and change their attitude, instead of empowering them by listening to what they need and helping them to create the resources to answer those needs. In each of these cases, all we are doing is perpetuating a system that was designed to keep the poor and people of color incarcerated, to prevent them from prospering, and perhaps worst of all, to interfere with the development of a full sense of self, their own power as individuals and as a community. The prosperity of Tulsa is being sucked out of the city. White flight took people out, took jobs out. Our whole tax base moved to the suburbs. We've allowed the country to break into to break into 8 separate school districts with different funding streams, while every year Tulsa Public Schools has been cut by tens of millions. We're graduating seniors with a 3rd grade reading level, and the people who have stayed in their communities are being the ones who blame for the health disparities, the nationally rated evictions, nationally ranked gun homicides. Systems are functioning as they were designed. We must change it. We must return to being people who care about people. It is not hard for me to believe that some people don't want to wear masks in public, and they want to send their children back to school in the height of a pandemic because they don't live in communities that are most impacted. Black and brown people's lives have always been the price white people have been willing to pay for wealth and convenience. This is what built the country, and what will kill us if we don't start listening and relate to once again value all human lives. I'm running to be your next city councilor because black and brown lives matter and should not be commodities that can be sacrificed for wealth. I'm running because our legislative body needs to see people as valuable and listen to them. We need everyone in Tulsa to act with compassion and empathy. When I worked at Youth Services of Tulsa Emergency Shelter, I was there for 5 years, shelter coordinator. I worked with someone named Rupert Henderson. Some people know him as Baby Boy or Rupert. Yeah. And he and I were working with this young man who just learned that he was being moved into a home from our shelter. And the placement that DHS had found was the last thing he wanted to do. He ended up breaking TVs, throwing plates, attacking Rupert and I. We were ducking, dodging. All we were saying to him was, take care of yourself. Don't hurt yourself. Like, calm down. It's okay. He ended up leaving and trashing our cars, breaking the windows. He sat on the lawn waiting to be arrested. This kid wanted to be arrested rather than go to a DHS placement. Systems are functioning as they were designed. Fast forward 2 years. There was a mentally ill man at QT in December, actually. It wasn't that long ago. It's next to Brightwater Apartments where I'm working now. And I remember there was this video of the officers addressing this guy. He had a gun. He was alone in the Quick Trip. 2 officers were in there with their guns pointed at him. 4 more officers burst in to the convenience store. They told him to set the gun down, and then they shot him. He died. I couldn't help but think of what would happen if we valued his life as much as we valued, property. What if, like, all this store, if he just had to wait outside? What if he just chilled? Like, what if we could just value people enough to give them the space that they need to have whatever feelings they need to have? So I thought back to that night at YST and how things didn't have to end this way. And how waiting safely outside an empty convenience store and letting someone act out their feelings and destroy property that can be insured and replaced instead of on people, which cannot, could have saved a life. It is not my place to second guess the actions of officers facing a violent man with a gun, but I also can't help but think of what if we valued him as much as we do the system. If our system didn't work the way it was designed to so well, we could have saved a life. My faith teaches me that we value one another as we value ourselves. And our system's not designed that way. Sadly, it's functioning exactly the way it was designed, and it will never change unless we're willing to make it change. I'm Mykey Arthrell. I'm running for District 5 City Council, and I need your help to make that change. So come to me after. I got lots of lid drop to do, taking drivers and all that. Thank you.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I just wanted to briefly introduce the next speaker we have. He's a man after everyone's heart, and I believe he will be the next mayor of our city. Everyone, Mr. Greg Robinson.
Good evening, how y'all doing? Oh man, it's a beautiful night. Hi.
Yeah.
I feel good tonight. Sometimes I get up here and I'm full of, like, y'all see that scowl on my face. So sometimes I'm full of my father. He gave me the sort of that righteous anger and the scowl. But sometimes I'm full of the enduring hope that my mom gave me. And I think tonight, maybe it's the weather, maybe it's the park that we're in, maybe it's the diversity of people. I feel a sense of hope tonight. And so I'm actually going to speak from that space. Oh my goodness, we're joined by people from Oklahoma City as well. Good to see you all as well. Thank you for being out here. I'm full of hope because we protested over a month ago. And we're still gathering today. We need to give ourselves, some love for that. I'm full of hope today because everybody here is not the oppressed, right? We have the privileged here as well, standing up for the oppressed. I'm full of hope because of that. I'm full of hope today because everybody is not of one racial background. It's just not black folks out here saying Black Lives Matter. It's Latinx folks saying that as well, right? It's our Native community out here as well. It's our white brothers and sisters out here as well. This is just as much Tulsa as the lie we've been told Tulsa was for 100 years before now, right? This group of Tulsans has just as much right to see the city that they believe in as we've seen for the past 100 years. And that's what moments like this are about. That's what painting Black Lives Matter on Greenwood Avenue is about. Because it is interesting to me that we were able to ignore laws for 100 years. And yet, we conveniently use laws when it suits us.
That's right.
These things seem little. It's just a painting. But it's not. Because there was a deep sacrifice that those artists, those activists made. It was symbolic of something. It was reclaiming something. And so when the best that we have is, well, the law tells us we have to erase it, I have to think back to what the law told us during Jim Crow.
That's right. That's right.
I have to think back to what the law told us before the Voting Rights Act was enacted. Rest in peace, John Lewis. I have to think back to what the law told us when native lands were stolen from them. In fact, when we just came in and stole everything from native peoples. I have to think back to what the law said when there were people that looked like me that was picking somebody else's cotton. You see, I'm not satisfied with what the law says if what the law says isn't just. I'm asking us to think critically, to think more critically about the city that we want to be in. Think more critically about what our city is going to be a generation from now. What are they going to say 100 years from now? Are they going to look back and say, they were just too cautious. They were just too stuck in their ways to actually move us forward? Are they going to be disappointed in us? Or are they going to look and say, wow, that generation took a step forward. That generation said they wanted everybody to have a pathway forward. That generation said they wanted everybody to feel safe in their neighborhoods. That generation said they wanted everybody to be able to breathe clean air. They wanted everybody to have access to good paying jobs. They wanted everybody to have access to transportation. Everybody. That's what I want them to say. That's why this little boy from 29th and North Lewis had the audacity to file and run for mayor. The city has a decision to make. They have decisions to make every single day. The mayor right now has had decisions to make for 4 years. And you all have a decision to make on August 25th. We can be a city that looks at our past and says, you know what? We're gonna do a little different this time because we've learned from our mistakes. And so a city that was ravaged by not having accountability in the police department 100 years ago, we're actually gonna invest in police accountability 100 years later. We're actually going to invest in a holistic view of public safety, meaning we're gonna put police officers in position to be police officers. Not mental health workers, not social workers, not immigration officials, police officers. We're going to look at an $122 million that's supposed to go to public safety. It's only going to the police, and we're going to redistribute that so we can start investing in building people up instead of locking people up. So we can start investing in combating poverty instead of criminalizing it. We're going to be a city that invests in inclusive economic growth strategies. Black lives do matter. See how easy that is? Black lives actually do matter, and it's not that difficult. Nothing happened to anybody. We actually feel better about it. We're going to invest in being a more inclusive city in terms of our economics, because inclusivity is prosperity. This is not just about marching and yelling at the top of your lungs. If we don't create inclusive pathways for people of color, then we're not doing anything. Right now, the average white family has twice as much in their income as the average black family. Right now, Native peoples denied home loans at 3.5 times the rates of white Tulsans. Right now, that's happening. We have to be truly inclusive. I like New Tulsa's initiative. That sounds good. But when you look at the data, on a scale from 1 to 5, we're a 1 when it comes to how we're supporting our immigrant communities. Not just the Latinx communities, the Hmong communities, the Russian communities, all of them. Everybody in Tulsa, whether you've been here 30 minutes or you've been here 30 years, needs to understand that this city is their city. Everybody needs a pathway. We're not going to bend to political pressure when deciding what's best for the safety of Tulsans anymore. That spans across public safety. It also spans across public health. A mask is not a political statement. It's not. But lastly, most important to me, we're gonna invest in our kids. All of our kids. It's traumatic to not have the mental and public health resources that we need right now in the city. It's traumatic to not invest inclusively in equitable housing policies and equitable economic development policies. And it's affecting our kids. If we think it's just about paying teachers more money, we haven't been in a classroom. Teachers didn't get into the classroom because of money. They got into this to try and make an impact. But when we don't recognize that Oklahoma has the highest ACE scores, meaning the highest adverse childhood experience scores, and we're not putting resources to combat that, we're not really dealing with the problem. See, what I'm talking about is not slogans. I'm not talking about just talking about stuff. I'm talking about doing something about it. That's what my mama told me. See, my mom, she was at the top of her game. She was a senior accountant at the Williams Company. And then she got multiple sclerosis. She stopped having the ability to walk. She had to retire. She's in a bed. Her husband dies, her caregiver. She's lost everything. And yet all she's telling me from her bed is, you gotta be solutions oriented at all times. You gotta never stop having hope. You gotta always be trying to figure out how to make something else better. You gotta be thinking about what you do have, not what you don't. That's the mindset that I grew up in. That's why I'm here. Not because I want to create division, but because I want to lean in and create real unity and real peace. But in order to create that, we got to tell the truth. How you going to look at a man struggling and tell him he's not struggling? How you going to put your knee on a man's neck and tell him that he can breathe if he talking? Huh? How you gonna tell a community that they ought to recover, but you won't give them reparations for killing their people and destroying their property? How are you gonna tell a people that they're included when you've been standing on their land and not honoring their cultures and not honoring their traditions? See, we've been living an illusion for too long. And so that is what I want to do as mayor. Not come in and ride in on a pretty white horse. Not tell you that everything is gonna be okay if we do nothing. But to say that I have the passion and I have the courage to stand with Tulsa if we're willing to actually do better than we've done. If we're willing to actually help our neighbor. If we're willing to actually combat injustices with truth. That's what I'm willing to do. And so if you're willing, I'm willing. I know what Tulsa can be, but we have work to do. Y'all understand? We have work to do. And so what I've been saying, at first I started saying no justice, no peace, right? No justice, no peace. But I've shifted now. Now I need y'all to look internally, because I'm not a messiah. Neither was Barack Obama, neither is Pastor Turner, neither is Rosa, neither is Nancy, right? No one person is gonna do this for you. Neither is Mario Johnson. Quit looking around. That's what Ella Baker was talking about when she said strong people don't need strong leaders until all of us decide that we're gonna step up and say something. Nothing is gonna change. And so now what I need y'all to repeat before I give the mic back is, if it is to be, it's up to me. If it is to be, it's up to me. If it is to be, it's up to me. If it is to be, it's up to me. I want y'all to vote on August 25th. Every day before then, I want you to keep marching. I want you to keep talking. I want you to keep demanding. I want you to keep standing. I want you to do whatever you can to fight for justice in this city and to fight for a better Tulsa. I am fighting for you. I'm going to be so glad when we can fight together and you have a mayor that's willing to stand up for you and stand with you. I thank you all so much. My name is Greg Robinson, and I'm running for mayor of Tulsa.
All right, everybody, let's give another big hand for Greg Robinson today. I'd like to invite our next speaker up, Miss Sherry Moore.
Gonna keep it going.
Good evening, Tulsa. I bring you greetings from Oklahoma City.